Good morning. Welcome to All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church, a liberal faith tradition in Braintree, Massachusetts since 1833. As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all persons as we engage in an ongoing search for truth and meaning. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on life's journey, and however you inhabit your body, you are welcomed into the life of this beloved community. My name is Joe Maloney. It is my pleasure to be your service associate this morning. If you are visiting us for the first time, would like to reach out or would like us to reach out to you, please click on the link provided in the chat to submit a connection card so we may follow up with you. Everyone will remain muted during the service except during the sharing of joys and concerns. Our services are recorded except for our shared joys and concerns and posted on our YouTube channel weekly. If you would like to activate Zoom's closed caption feature during the service, click the CC icon at the bottom of your screen and select Live Transcript. After the service, everyone is invited to stay online for our virtual coffee hour. Our guest speaker, Latifah Griffin-Rogers, will be leading our service today. Latifah is currently intern minister at the Unitarian Society of Germantown, Pennsylvania. She is a graduate of the Lancaster Theological Seminary and a licensed psychotherapist. Latifah was raised Baptist and became a member of the First Unitarian Church of Wilmington in 2018. She lives in Aldan, Pennsylvania with her spouse, Kisha, their 5 children, a dog, a turtle, and a snake. Latifah, welcome to All Souls. Now for our chalice lighting. Our words this morning are by Rebecca A. Savage, titled Welcome, Sweet Soul. Welcome, sweet soul, to this place of renewal and hope. Here we welcome your tender places and yearnings to be fully present. Welcome, sweet soul, to this place of meaning and belonging. Here we welcome your questions and wonderings on the journey towards wholeness. Welcome, sweet soul, to this place of compassion and heart. Here we welcome you, all of you, and we invite you in as you are, as we are. Here we welcome you to renew your connection to the spirit of life, renew your relationship with the sacred, the interdependent web of all existence. Welcome, sweet soul.
Everywhere, its temple or space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its ritual works of love.
Now for the lighting of our earth candle. We light this green candle to affirm our commitment to caring for the planet that is our home.
We covenant to create a caring, affirming, and inclusive community that invites each of us to become our best self. We covenant.
Good morning, All Souls UU of Braintree. I am Latifah Griffin-Rogers, as Joe said earlier, and I'm delighted to be with you this morning. So I have some opening words. And one thing you will notice about today's theme is that I was instructed to reflect on the Me Too movement and what that means in the context of our UU principle. So there's a theme of that throughout our liturgy this morning. So our opening words are from or by Maureen Killoran, titled In Need of Healing. Welcome, you who come in need of healing, you who are confused or have been betrayed. Welcome, you with your problems and your pain. Welcome to your joys and your wonderings. Welcome your need to hope, your longing for assurance. Instead of answers, here may you find safety for your questions. Instead of promises, may you find community for your struggles, people with hands and hearts to join you in engaging the challenges and changes of our day. Let's do it. Our reading is by Jacqueline Friedman this morning, and it's titled Consent is an Active Yes. Consent is not just the absence of no, it is the presence of an active yes. Women don't exist in an always state of consent until we object. We are sovereigns over our own bodies. And if you want to interact with us sexually, if you want to interact with our bodies, you have to get our consent actively. You don't just have to proceed until you hear our objections, because that assumes that women are here for consumption until we tell you otherwise. And that's not true. We are full, sovereign human beings. My definition of consent is affirmative consent, where each one of us, regardless of our gender, is responsible to make sure that our sexual partners not only aren't saying stop, please, but are actively into whatever is happening. That's just a human responsibility we have to each other. It's not about gender at all, ultimately. It's about all of us. And if we're decent human beings, want to only be doing things intimately with people who want to be doing them.
Each week, we take time to share our personal joys and concerns, so all of us might help carry the burden and join in the celebration. If you wish to share a personal sorrow or joy from your heart, I invite you to unmute your mic, tell us your name, and briefly share. Or you may enter it in the chat where it will be read aloud for you. I add this last gem for all that remains unspoken in our hearts. Spirit of love, we lift those who are caregivers, those who have lost loved ones, May we be a blessing to those in need of our love and care. For all that is spoken and unspoken, let us take a moment of silent meditation.
Mystery of the universe, you who think of not as a being among other beings, but as the very ground of being itself. Thank you for this day, for another sunrise, another chance for us to witness the wonder of creation. We know that yours is a creation that is truly double-edged, a yin-yang universe, for it is indeed one in which the life-giving flame can also burn. But it is also one in which the dark, cold, misting rain gives rebirth into spring. And it is one in which, paradoxically, our acquaintance with pain and sorrow can help us better appreciate pleasure and joy. Help us then to have the courage and strength to embrace it all, to embrace what is. Help us, we who are similarly double-edged, whose love for those closest to us can so easily provoke our own tribal instincts and prejudice, whose own pain, rather than fostering empathy and compassion, may turn us inward, to dig moats, to build walls rather than bridges. So help us to embrace this doubled-edged yin-yang universe with courage and strength. But above all, help us to do so in a spirit of love and compassion. For this, it seems, is our eternal challenge. And it is also the wellspring of our eternal salvation. Blessed be. This reading by Laura Hershey sets up my reflection for this morning. So listen closely. What you risk telling your story, you will bore them. Your voice will break, your ink will spill and stain your coat. No one will understand. Their eyes become fences. You will park yourself forever on the outside, your differentness once and all for all revealed. Dangerous. The names you give to yourself will become epitaphs. Your happiness will be called bravery, denial. Your sadness will justify their pity. Your fear will magnify their fears. Everything you say would prove something about their God or their economic system, your feelings, that change day to day, kaleidoscope will freeze in place, brand new forever, justify anything they decide to do with you. Those with power can afford to tell their story or not. Those without power risk everything to tell their story and must. Someone somewhere will hear your story and decide to fight, to live and refuse compromise. Someone else will tell her own story, risking everything.
Now for our collection. Each week, we have an opportunity to give thanks for the blessings we have received in our lives and in the life of our community church, the life of our church community. Our offering is a chance to give back in support of the work and outreach of our church. You may submit your offering electronically by following the link in the chat, or you may mail it to All Souls Church at the address also provided in the chat. At this time, our morning offering will be given and received.
Let us take a moment of silent contemplation before we begin. Thank you. I debated with my spirit, with my wife, over and over again over the direction of this reflection. Your esteemed Reverend Rivers reached out and asked a group of colleagues if anyone was interested in talking about the subject of the Me Too movement. And if you don't know about the Me Too movement, every 98 seconds, someone in the United States is sexually assaulted. And a new survivor is forced to carry the burden no one else should, right? And sexual violence impacts people of all ages and genders. And when this came out, of course, it was a bunch of celebrities that began to share their stories about how they ended up famous, right? And Harvey Weinstein was at the center of that. And so there's a lot of history beyond that. So I responded to Reverend Rivers that I was available without thinking too much about the topic. I was excited that your congregation, number one, is in historic Massachusetts, and it is a historic congregation or building. And Massachusetts is also a state that's super essential to our Unitarian Universalist history. I'm from Pennsylvania. So anytime ministry takes me beyond these borders, I am like super excited. So anyway, the origin of the debate involved whether I should tell a personal story, someone else's story, or no story at all, and simply just present facts and what we could do to support persons that have been violated. Then I thought, well, no one really knows me in Massachusetts, but what if by chance they know someone else's story, right? I would fall out of this virtual pulpit if someone said, hey, you're telling my story. So, as you can see, I was thinking way too much, right? So at this point, as I'm overthinking, it's Friday evening. Yeah, like 2 days ago. I have this debate raging in my head. I have facts and figures and influential people of the Me Too movement listed at the ready. And now my arbitrary sermon deadline is approaching Friday night, and I haven't written anything, right? C'est la vie. So Friday night, I decided that I wanted to share a very personal piece of my life, since we're all friends now. And besides, nothing really lands with people unless you really tell it authentically or you're being authentic to what you're sharing. So in the late 1980s, I was an innocent kid. And at this point, I was still an only child, and my mother was single, and she literally took me everywhere, all right, including some sketchy places I probably shouldn't have been. But the other places we frequented included some of her good friends, whom they are still friends to this day. And all of her friends had multiple children. And so me being the only child at that time, I absolutely loved visiting with her friends. My mom's friends' children became more like brothers and sisters to me more than anything, right? And they still are to this day, right? We had a bond. We all grew up together. One day, my mother's work shift changed. And suddenly she has to work the overnight shift. She's working at the post office in Philadelphia. And they changed her shift. She has to work 11 to 7. My dad wasn't present in my life, and he was living his life in Indianapolis. That's a whole nother story and sermon topic. So my mom had to depend on, family and friends to help, watch me overnight while she worked. And she actually had to rely on friends more than anything. But this one friend had 5 children, 1 daughter, 4 sons, who were all each 11 months apart, right? And this was my favorite house to visit. They always had snacks. It always felt like endless recess at their house, right? I learned how to ride a bike there, learned how to skate, play manhunt, build forts, learn basketball, football, everything. We just did everything because it was just 6 of us, right? It was my favorite house. Like, I can't understate that, my favorite house. Because of my mom's work shift, I began to spend the night at their house a few times a week. And it was here that I began to witness the dark domestic violence that was occurring when all of the neighbors slept. And it was here I witnessed the one and only daughter enter an empty room with her stepfather, Mr. Mike, we'll call him that. And when she came out, she made me a promise not to tell her mom or my mom what I saw. My innocence at 4 years old didn't register what she meant. She was 8 years old and I trusted her. Right. So I asked her, next time, can I come? And she said no. And then she started crying. So that stayed with me. I never made the connection until years later when I was in my own therapy and debriefing with my own mother, that I truly realized that my then 8-year-old playmate was a victim too. I eventually had my turn. On this day, my mom and her friend had to go to the grocery store, and Mr. Mike was going to watch us, all 6 of us. I didn't realize that we were alone with Mr. Mike until my 8-year-old playmate came out of Mr. Mike's bedroom crying. I was coming out of the adjacent bathroom. And I asked my friend, why was she crying? And she shook her head no. And Mr. Mike then said, she's okay. Come on in here. I want to show you something in the bathroom. And I said, well, I just came from the bathroom. You got a bathroom in there too? Right. So remember, it's just me and my mom, we're single. So we have a little 2-bedroom house, 1 bathroom. So they have this bigger house, multiple bathrooms. So Mr. Mike replied, yes. And my 8-year-old friend was on the staircase shaking her head no. And I was too young to understand why she didn't want me to see Mr. Mike's bathroom. So I went in. I'll spare you the details, but I was never the same after that. And when I left that room, I was afraid for my life. I didn't understand what happened to me, and I didn't tell my mother until I was 10 years old, out of fear. On that same day, I eventually found my playmate outside in the backyard, sitting on the steps. We made eye contact, and she lowered her head, and I started crying. And she did too. And we never said anything. I just sat next to her and we cried. 2 little Black girls violated by the very person that was entrusted to protect us. I understood that as our Me Too moment. I'm able to talk about that thanks to therapy very early on. But my playmate still struggles with chronic depression regarding the abuse, which I am most certain occurred more times than I witnessed. When I became older, I realized that my friend and I weren't alone in our abuse, and that this happens much more often than we realize, and that the perpetrators are often people we know and trust. So after years and years of repressing those memories, I'm able to talk about it now. And I imagine how many other folks haven't talked about it. Perhaps there's some of you this morning that is a survivor, and you've never had the courage to talk about it. And that's okay. And I want you to know it doesn't just happen within families. It happens within our church communities as well. Take child sexual abuse within the Catholic Church, for an example. Those were men that the congregation knew and trusted with the lives of the spiritual lives of children. So beyond the Me Too movement, in November 2017, the hashtag Church2 was started by Emily Joy and Hannah Pash on Twitter. And it began trending in response to Me Too as a way to try and highlight and stop sexual abuse that happens in churches. And in early January 2018, about 100 evangelical women also launched the hashtag Silence is Not Spiritual to call for changes to how sexual misconduct is dealt with within the church. The hashtag Church2 started spreading again virally later in January 2018 in response to a live stream video admission by a pastor to his church that he sexually assaulted a 17-year-old girl 20 years before when he was a youth pastor driving her home. But then he received applause by his church for admitting to the incident and asking for forgiveness. This pastor then resigned from his staff position at his church and stepped away from ministry. Now, the argument in this article that's reported on child sex abuse in the Catholic Church is that it's one of the biggest crises in church history. End quote. So if we can't go to church for a safe haven, then where can we go? If church is the place of our trauma, where can we go? Within our Unitarian Universalist tradition, our first and second principle holds us accountable to the injustices of sexual abuse. So if you know something, see something, you got to say something. If you know someone who's a perpetrator, you have to say something. The world is a better place when children's innocence aren't threatened simply because someone cannot control their sexual urges. And I know it's not easy to talk about the abuse, but there are safe places and safe people to talk to, and I'm one of them. I'm going to end with this quote here, one of my favorite quotes by Brene Brown. And she says, owning your story is the bravest thing you'll ever do. It takes a lot of courage to speak about what has happened to you. You may not be sure of what the listener will think when you share your story. To regurgitate all that pain inside you allows you to then realize your own worth. And you can begin to look at yourself authentically and courageously deal with what it did to you. So please find your voice and don't remain silent. That's an end quote. I encourage you to talk to a therapist, talk to a spiritual advisor, talk to a friend, advocate for someone else. Get it out of your system or it will consume you. If you are listening today, dear person, you are not a victim. You are a survivor. So be empowered. Be empowered this morning. Blessed be, and amen. Our closing words are by Roddy Biggs, Pathway to Healing. Friends, thank you for your witness to all that exists on the margins. Thank you for your commitment to hold yourselves and one another in great and steadfast love. Moving forward from this space, may we continue to nurture spiritual growth. May we continue to travel along the winding pathway to healing from whatever brokenness we individually and collectively hold, knowing that we do not journey this path alone. Blessings on this upcoming week, my friends. Thank you for your time today.
As we extinguish the chalice, as we extinguish the flame of this chalice, may each of us carry its light into every day of our lives. We'd like to give special thanks to our participants in this morning's service. For our Zoom host, Alicia Jerriman, for our virtual usher, Mary Mitchell, for our musician and our music director, Jacob Clapper, and for our guest speaker, Latifah Griffin-Rogers, and also to everyone as well for attending. Now for announcements. We have 2 connection circles. The first connection circle is on this coming Tuesday at 4:00, and that will be an open conversation. The second connection circle is this coming Friday and at 10:00, and the topic will be Beatles covers with Judy. The Chimes newsletter submission for April is due this coming Friday at 6:00. Please submit your submissions to Maggie. The writing group will be meeting on Wednesday of next week at 4:00. I also just want to mention that if anyone would like to send a note of sympathy in memory of Sal, the address has been posted in the chat. Are there any additional announcements?
Yeah, can I add, if I could, oh, hang on, let me
Yes.
if I can add, the writing group theme this month is That Illegal Thing I Did. All things will stay in the group, but it's going to be hysterical, I'm sure. So anybody who hasn't joined before, write something, join us. It's going to be a good time. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additional announcements?
I guess I should share that as treasurer, we are in the midst of stewardship season now, and there if you could send your estimates of giving to me or email them, put them in the mail. I think I put info in the chat about that. I'll be trying to communicate with each one of you personally, but I haven't gotten to that quite yet. We have until mid-April. So thank you for thinking about us about this community in the coming year.
And now I invite you to stay on screen for our virtual coffee hour. Thank you for being with us this morning and have a great week.